Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another of our Webinar Wednesdays. So good afternoon. I'm Kelly Bearden and I am the director of the CSU Bakersfield SBDC. And I'm going to start sharing my screen and we're going to get on down the road. So as you know, regular attendees of Webinar Wednesday, this is number 96 in our series that started back on March 18th of 2020 of managing your small business beyond the pandemic. Again, number 96, 96 weeks in a row of live webinars. We're somewhere around 207 or 8 with webinars. Got a great special guest today, and we're really looking forward to really kind of having a great webinar today. So let's get rolling. A lot to go over. We do. So what's up today? Today, January the 12th. Well, we have another new program that's coming in 2022 to talk about. One that's going to be out relatively soon, and it looks like, hopefully in another month or two. So this will be our third program that we've announced in only 2 Webinar Wednesdays this year. So they are continuing new programs to assist new and also existing businesses, and we will get into a little of that. Today, we're going to talk about just very little about, I think you guys all see firsthand what's been going on as our recovery, our small business recovery battles with this Omicron, as I like to call, varmint, this Omicron varmint that is really, as we all know, is really kind of affecting everybody's life and everybody's business at this point. Today, we have small business expert Rhonda Abrams joining us, and we'll get a great presentation from Rhonda today. We'll share very little of the latest in small business news. We'll glance at some of the pandemic relief programs that are still open and still viable. We'll take your questions. Please put your questions in the Q&A box. Our producer today, Maureen Busher-Dang, will be there supplying you plenty of information and items in the chat box. So resources that we talk about today are going to be available in the chat box. Q&A we'll go over at the end of the webinar today. And also we'll likely follow this up with our usual e-blast that will contain all the resources discussed and a recording of today's webinar that'll come later in the week. So that's all good. Let's go to our poll question. We have only one, trying to keep things a little concise on my end today. So, but I would like your input on what you're planning to do in 2020 regarding maybe working on your particular businesses. So let's launch this poll. And the poll question is, I plan in 2022 to develop the following. And this is a multiple choice poll, so you can answer more things than one. You plan on doing budgeting or cash flow forecasting. You plan to do business or strategic planning, marketing, maybe a marketing or social plan. Maybe your planning involves a technology plan, maybe an enhanced website, maybe an e-commerce site or something along those lines. Or maybe it's a finance plan in order to keep those resources coming into your business. So 5 options. If we don't hit your options and other, go ahead and enter it in the chat and we'll pick those up at some time today. But if you plan in 2022 to do any of the following, and that would be budgeting, cash flow forecasting, it would be business or strategic planning, marketing, or maybe doing a social media plan. Maybe you have a technology plan that you'd like to do, or also potentially a finance plan. Okay. So we have 56% that have participated. So that's good. That's like 56% of you are going to do one of these 3 things. We're going to jump in this poll at this time and share the results with you. And what we found with this poll, as I get a drum roll, is most of you that responded of the 59% that plan on doing something, 94 of those 59% want to do some business planning or some strategic planning, and also budgeting. And budgeting, 63% of the respondents, marketing, a social media plan, 44%, a finance plan, 38%, and a technology plan there at 25%. So thank you for jumping in and providing your feedback. It's pretty interesting. I have kind of older information on this, maybe a few years back, but at one point business planning and budgeting, and I might have mentioned this on a previous webinar, we're pretty equal in the number of small businesses that actually perform those tasks. So if you had a business plan or you budgeted for your small business, you were in only 13% of small businesses that did that. Now, attending a webinar like this probably puts you a little different than a lot of the businesses where you're looking to do that, and we see the numbers are proportionately higher. So thank you. Thank you for participating there. Okay, I'm going to stop that share and kind of move on from our poll and get back to our PowerPoint. And with this, what we want to do is we want to, first of all, kind of jump in and look at a few of the things that are happening and a few of the things that are happening online as well. And a few of those things have to do with the programs that we're looking forward to. So here's kind of our status action for the key pandemic relief programs that are currently open. We still have the employee retention credit that is open retroactively because the program ended as of September 30th of 2021. The city of Bakersfield has a restart loan to grant program that is currently open. Later this month, or maybe in early February, we talked a little about this last week, mentioned it again today, the Kern County MicroGrant Program. PPP Forgiveness for those about 15% of businesses that don't have their PPP forgiven. It's still open. Talked a lot about the EIDL program in the last 95 weeks. It is currently closed, but you still can go through reconsideration. You still can get an increase. The EIDL targeted advance is closed, but it actually is going through accepting reconsiderations as well. The supplemental, the additional $5,000 if you were able to qualify for the $10,000 of targeted EIDL advance is closed, and there is no further processing on that. And a little thing we discussed last week, this FEMA COVID-19 funeral repayment expense of about $9,000 is open, not a business expense, but still, I think it's a good customer or community service to provide that information since it is open and affects the most affected and most serious of those with COVID. So we talked about the MicroGrant program last week. And again, this program is going to begin around February 1st. The entire county has grants up to $2,500 per business. You had to be in business in 2019. And in 2019, what you would have needed to do is produce a tax return and have 5 or fewer full-time equivalent employees with revenue of under $50,000. We're one of the 4 nonprofits that are carrying this out. We will actually be producing a separate on-demand half-hour webinar on this. We'll promote that as we get closer to the opening of this program. Right now, we're encouraging businesses to prepare for this to get 2019 taxes available. If they're not, it's still probably not going to be too late if you can get those in and get those processed. But if you have your 2000, start digging up that information. There's a 2-page application that we'll be talking about in the next week or 2 and get you forward thinking toward getting all this information together. One of the things that we're talking about new today, and this is the $1.1 billion that's coming to California, and it's coming to California through a much larger state small business credit initiative. And this is initially $10 billion that was part of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, signed into law about 10 months ago. And what's kind of unique about this program is it was one that was actually a stimulus program that came out of the Great Recession with the Obama administration, a much smaller program back then. But it is being brought back and recycled to a much larger amount. For example, in California, with the program that came out in probably about 2011, 2010, the amount was only $157 million, to whereas now there are going to be programs that are going to be available to the tune of $1.1 billion for small businesses in California. And we'll get to how that works. So California has filed, and I believe they have got their application into the federal government, and they're set to receive $1.18 billion. There's been a lot of discussions on how these funds will be used. They're going to be shared between the iBank, and that is the infrastructure bank, and the iBank has a small business loan program, and also the California Pollution Control Financing Authority. That is that wonderful acronym there, CPCFA. They had a program earlier, well, actually it was last decade, that was the California Capital Access Program. And I know you're thinking like me at the time is, what is the California Pollution Control Financing Authority doing funding for small businesses? And maybe we can help you with that in a second. But the major goal of this program is going to be deploying capital to socially and economic disadvantaged individuals and communities, along with very small businesses. So half of the money is going to go to actually the Pollution Control Authority. Half of it is going to go to the iBank, and $200 million is going to go to a venture capital program. Now, this venture capital program is going to have funds, and of course, the details aren't out on this. This is to get you thinking about how maybe you can access this money. And again, here at the SBDC, we're going to be all over it. So, but one of those groups that they really want to try to promote are going to be underrepresented venture capital managers. It is also going to be underserved entrepreneurs and business owners. There's going to be geographic areas that are socially, economically disadvantaged or receive limited venture capital funding. And boy, I can think of two counties right there, being Inyo and Mono County, of the three counties that we serve here out of our Bakersfield office. The last one is going to need a little more definition for me, because it is relating to climate equity and climate justice. And, you know, for those of us living in the San Joaquin Valley, climate justice is really climate injustice, where today we could get fog, sometimes dense, and in the middle of summer, our climate injustice is going to be that 111-degree temperature that comes rolling through as a high temperature every single summer. But I think it's going to be a little bit differently defined, but that is my 2 cents on that. So quickly, let me change my share right here and do a little bit different share and jump online real quick. I am running out of time, but do a new share real quick, whereas I get to this particular slide. And this is the iBank, where they have the California Infrastructure and Economic Development Bank. And one of the main programs will be their guarantee program. If you go to their website, like I just did, and kind of look at information, there's a lot of information that's still coming. And oh, there, look, hey, there's Megan Hodap, who was a small business finance manager with the iBank, and one of our guests over the summer. So I'm sure she'll have plenty of information on this particular program. But $500 million as part of their Small Business Finance Center, $200 million for disadvantaged venture capital programs, and then $500 million also through this, the Capital Access Program, the Capital Access Program, or CalCap. And I remember CalCap last decade. We did some deals with this particular program. A lot of it was to incentivize lenders to actually make loans that are a little more higher risk. And it really came out of before the Great Recession of 2008. Small business capital was much easier to get than it is nowadays, and has been ever since 2008. So here's a list of the 6 programs that they actually produce. Some of those are related to pollution control, and some of those are not, such as the Collateral Support Program, and then the California Access Program for small business as far as capital goes. So programs that are quite interesting and coming up. We'll be talking about them in the coming weeks quite frequently. So moving along, the last week we talked a little bit about the California Dreamer Grants, and you know, it's kind of interesting because it calls for $35 million for the California Dream Fund to seed entrepreneurship. And we just now talked about another program that is in addition, that will be there for essentially $200 million. So a lot of these grants are between 5,000 and 10,000. I can tell you our Central California region has applied to actually work with clients on this. We hope to work with several hundred clients in order to get $5,000 to $10,000 grants. We'll be talking in the coming weeks about what type of business entity will receive $5,000, which will receive $10,000. Even if our Central California SBDC region is not successful in our grant, there will be somebody doing these programs in the San Joaquin Valley, and we will work with whoever we can to get these done and out to our businesses that need them. So you will need a business plan and also some technical assistance. There's a little bit on that FEMA program that I think Maureen is going to put the 800 number if you need to talk to anybody. The EIDL program in 2022, the no longer accepting COVID EIDL, that ended on December 31st, but as we mentioned, still doing some other processings. And lastly, I want to mention on EIDL that there are a number of other non-COVID. And EIDL, of course, is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, the disaster loan program for SBA. There have been other disasters in California, such as fires and droughts and floods that have affected many of our businesses. And those programs still have some programs that are open in those particular areas if your business was impacted. There's information on your request for reconsideration. You can contact our Fresno district office of the SBA via email and try to get anything resolved or get something resolved. There's a lot of issues. I just cannot, I could go into a whole webinar and tell you the number of issues we've seen with people that have had problems getting their EIDL funded. And a lot of this resulted from, as you know, fraud concerns that really happened early in this particular process. PPP Forgiveness, those are the timelines. If you need PPP Forgiveness, you can contact the center and we can move on. And moving on is exactly what I'm going to do a few minutes late today and introduce Rhonda Abrams. And Rhonda has been a great friend of the SBDC program for a long time. Many of our SBDCs have utilized her great abilities as an author and entrepreneur. She is a USA Today columnist, widely recognized as one of the nation's foremost experts. Rhonda's written 19 books, including 22 of the 25 top entrepreneurship programs in the United States. Business schools are using some of her business planning and entrepreneurship books. I have to check with California State University, Bakersfield to see if we are, because I am sure we're our top 25 school. Rhonda's president and chief entrepreneur of the Planning Shop, publishing company creating content for small businesses. Rhonda was educated at UCLA and Harvard University, named one of the 100 most influential women in Silicon Valley, one of the top 100 small business influencers. Rhonda, it's great to have you here. We're looking forward to your presentation, so please take it away.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you, Maureen, and thank you all of you who are here with us today. Are you able to see and hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
good. Just want to make sure that we are, and I'm so delighted to be with you here. I am a native Californian, live in California, grew up in Southern California, and I have driven by Bakersfield. I haven't spent much time there, but I've been there and been in the Central Valley quite a lot. My nephew lives in the Central Valley. So I'm delighted to be with you all today. And my goal today really is to help get you started on 2022 and all of the things that means, help you emotionally and optimistically get motivated for 2022, and also to take a look at your goals and tactics and objectives of things that you're going to do in 2022, including giving you some tools that will help you make some decisions so that we won't muddle through all of this together as well. So I'm going to share my screen. I have a few slides here. That's okay. I'm going to do that here. And let's see if you got there. Today, and they've already introduced me, I don't know about you, but that's sort of the way I've felt coming into 2022 and ending 2021. I think the last couple of years have been so hard on all of us that I think it's very difficult for us to get going sometime. And I'm just going to share that, the first week of this January, last week, was really hard. I found myself dragging, and I had been sick, not with COVID, but old-fashioned retro cold during the holidays. And I think the idea that we're in another surge of COVID, even though it seems to be milder. I think all of that put us in this kind of slump. And I certainly, in talking with other people, had a sense that people were feeling like that. And of course, because of COVID, everything is still so unpredictable. It's not like we know what we're going to be able to do for sure. We know what everything is out of. And many times you start a year going, I've got these resolutions, I've got these things I plan on doing, but the uncertainty around coronavirus and COVID makes things even harder. I was just talking with a friend about one of the hard things that I think COVID has done to us is there is something that's attributed to Abraham Lincoln, probably wrongly attributed, that he said the key to happiness was something to do, someone to love, and something to look forward to. And I think one of the things that we've had the last couple of years is that it's been hard to look forward to things. So one of the things I want to do today is to help you look forward to things and to be optimistic as we approach this year and as you make plans for this year. I should tell you, as we get started, by the time we're through here, I'm going to give you, first there'll be a free worksheet for you to be able to do, and I'm going to give you some specifics of things for you to talk about during January, hopefully, and to be able to help you get a structure for the year. So I'm going to hopefully leave you with some enthusiasm, revving up your engine we'll talk about, but also some specific tactics that you can use, because Kelly and other people in the SBDCs who know me know I like to always have actionable tips, not just chit chat. So we're going to do a little bit of chit chat, but we're also going to get into the actual tips that we can do. I think one of the first things to understand is there is no normal anymore, certainly not for the foreseeable future. And that means that a lot of what is going to depend on your success, what your success is going to depend on more than ever, I think, is attitude. And I've looked at this a lot over the last 2 years as we've talked. I'm getting back to this. And one of the attitudes that you really have to have is that you're going to be able to succeed, that you're going to be able to rev up with this. So we're going to talk about how to restart your engine for 2022, how to rev your motor, and how to have an attitude that's going to keep you going. And first of all, let me also say, I've worked with small business owners and entrepreneurs. Gosh, I hate to admit it, but it's over 30 years. It's almost 30 years. And I think, well, there's all different kinds of people who are entrepreneurs, all kinds of industries they go into, all different kinds of things. I think one of the things that's almost always true is that at heart, they are optimists. Now, they may complain, they may, talk about all the problems they're having, but somebody who starts and runs a small business is at heart an optimist. And you have that in your DNA, and we're going to hopefully brush that up again here. So, and the part of it is to understand that while things have been disrupted a lot, a venture capitalist told me this sentence, that disruption is when someone does it to you and innovation is when you do it to yourself. Well, the outside world has done it to you. Let us be clear. A lot of what you're dealing with, whether you're have great challenges or whether you are now embracing some great opportunities that have come to you, a lot of it has come from the outside world. Many years I can deal with small business owners who most of the issues that they deal with are things that they themselves have created, or one or two of their clients, or one or two of their employees. But we are now being in a situation where since March of 2020, this world has been disrupted. But I'm going to ask you to think about it flipping it a little bit. All right, you've been disrupted and now you're going to innovate. And you've probably already been doing it because you're already on this call today, on this webinar, and you're still around in January 2022. And a lot of small businesses aren't. So you are people who are capable of innovating and moving with the flow and recognizing that challenging times create opportunities. I have a webinar where I talk a little bit about dealing with a recession. And in fact, what we've seen is and I don't have the specific number at my fingertips, but a huge percentage of the Fortune 500 started in recessions. And that's because challenging times for others create opportunities for you, but you have to be able to embrace change. And I would say if any attitude, this is probably the second most important attitude. The first most important attitude is you have to believe in yourself. And we're going to talk about believing in yourself. And if you get nothing else from this webinar today, I want you to walk away today, and we're going to talk about it a little bit, reminding yourself of the talents, the skills, the attitudes, the experience, the intellect, the personality, the risk-taking, the creativity, whatever those bundles of things that you have in you that have enabled you to get to this point, whether you're just starting out or you've been in business for 20 years, those things are your most important assets. And those you still have, regardless of what has happened on the outside world. You just have to maybe get back in touch with some of those. But the second most important attitude is that you just recognize and embrace change, because, that is the reality of small business life, that the small businesses that I've seen suffer the most over the last 30 years that I've been doing it are ones who have thought, what I'm doing now is what I will always be doing. And the way that I'm doing it will be the way I've always done it. So the idea that change is happening to you, you remember, innovation is when you do it to yourself. You change, it's sort of like, I've never done Eastern religion thing, Eastern martial arts like karate, but I know that one of the things you're supposed to do there is when somebody hits you, you take that energy that comes at you when you turn it back on them. And that's, in a way, I want you to visualize what happens with you with change, is that the change that comes from the outside comes at you, but you then turn it into some power you can use. And so I think one of the most important things here is to develop an annual business plan. I don't just say this because, and I was so thrilled when that poll just showed that 95% of you want to do a strategic plan, probably why you're on this webinar today. Only 25% of you wanted to do technology plan, and we're going to get back to that because we're going to talk a little bit about some technology. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some technology that you do have to get to. But we're going to talk today about an annual plan, doing it. We can do a big business plan. I've written a book on it. You can do that. But an annual plan is a much more comprehensive, smaller task for you to do it. I'm not just preaching to the choir. Yesterday, we just did our annual plan session with my team. Usually every year we've done it in my living room, with Post-it notes that are the size of, big poster size Post-it notes that you can put on the wall, and doing all of that. We've had lots of preparation, looking at our numbers and everything. This was much more casual. We did it with Zoom. It was a 3-hour Zoom meeting. Do not recommend 3 hours on Zoom. We did a bio break, but it is better in person if you can do it in person, but having a situation where if you have a team members that you plan with them, especially critical team members, but even if it's just yourself, to sit down and take stock of where you've been. We're going to talk about specific things and where you are going to be going in the future in 2022, maybe the first half of 2022, because there is no normal and we don't know what's happening. But I think the important part is to think about doing this plan. And also, I do want to say, doing a bigger strategic plan where you really are looking at industry forces, you're looking at your competition in depth, where you're really taking a look at all of that, is really vital. And I will just tell you that doing a business plan saved my business really directly, because I've been in business quite some time, and I had a new business, as well as my current thing is at a small publishing company, but I also was doing a .com era business, and 9/11 suddenly ended it. I mean, literally ended it within 2 days. And fortunately, we sat down and we did a big business plan looking at the publishing side. And I had looked and said, we have 90% of our sales come from consumers. Where are the other 10% coming from? And we saw it was the academic market. And seeing that, looking at that, looking at at how we were going to survive, looking at where our sales could come from, really helped us. So we then moved into going to marketing to the academic market, which is now, by the way, 90% of my sales. But we moved there, and by the time we had a distributor go bankrupt, the distributor that distributed to the consumer market, we had already gotten to where we had more than half of our sales coming from another channel. So don't think of your business plan process as merely something you do to learn how to make more money or to run your business more efficiently, which it does, but it's also a survival technique. It helps you see what's coming at you, see where you're weak, and see how you can prepare. And I can absolutely say that a business plan saved my business life, and doing it, but we don't have to do a whole big one right now in January. Remember, I don't expect you to be all that enthusiastic. I just want you to do an annual plan, and we're going to talk a little bit about how you're going to do that. By the way, I will take questions at the end if you want to put it in the chat. So we can just feel free to ask questions or comments or share some of your concerns. I'm here, we can have this as a chat. I know I'm talking pretty quickly. So let's talk about what do you do in an annual planning process? So first of all, as I just said, and the first thing to do, and I'm going to start, I'll come right back to this slide. But the first thing to do is to figure out how you're going to do an annual plan, what the process is going to be. I don't know how many of you are one-person businesses, but even if it's one-person business, I don't want you to think about doing an annual plan at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a busy afternoon when you're already exhausted and you've already done it. I want you to schedule and set aside a time to do an annual plan. It can be a couple of hours. You can go to a coffee shop if you're going into coffee shops these days, or Bakersfield's nice enough to sit outside. You can do it in your living room. Get away from other people, get away from your desk, because you want to be thoughtful. And if you work with other people, if you have a team, you can do it. If you can get together, and some of you are still in your workplaces or gone back to your workplaces, it's better to do it together, but set aside that time. Don't answer phone calls, don't answer emails, don't get involved with that. Planning is part of your business. And it's probably the part of business that's going to, in the long run, make you more money, make you survive. So it's a critical business activity. So set aside time for it. Don't just maneuver it. And come up with an agenda. It doesn't have to be a very fancy agenda. I'm going to hold up. This was our agenda for yesterday's meeting. I've written some notes on it. It wasn't anything fancy, but we just had some key things, mostly along the lines, the key topic areas are mostly along the lines I'm going to share in that screen. But have an agenda, even if it's just you, by yourself, going to a coffee shop. Before you get to the coffee shop, the day before, while you're at your computer, while you're at your business, sit down and come up with an agenda for yourself. And you may want to take, if you be able to refer to some data, we certainly did. So you may want to be connected to Wi-Fi and bring some data with you. All right, so let's look at these. What are you going to do during this planning session? The first thing, and I think this is really critical, and my social media coordinator uses this term when we came up with a social media plan. It was her first question, and I hadn't really used this term before. I think it's a really good one. What are your pillars? What are the things that hold you up? What are the reason that your business exists? What is the thing that makes you special? What are your core competencies? What is it that you do that makes your business special, that is the core of your business? We, for instance, in Planning Shop, we are a content creation company. That is who we are. Everything else that we do really still depends on us creating content, how we distribute it, what form it goes into. I mean, we are also a book publishing and software publishing company, but the main pillar is that we create our own content. And so I think the first thing to ask yourself is, what are your pillars? You have more than one. What are the things that hold you up? And not stand in your way, hold you up, but are your foundation. And basically, what are you about? And that's, even before as you walk into as you start your annual process, it's an important conversation to have, because it's easy to get away from that. I once talked to somebody who ran a restaurant, and when we were talking about what their core competency was, and she said, it's hospitality, right? It's hospitality, not food. It's hospitality. It's the whole thing of what that restaurant was about, was creating a situation where the people who came as their guest felt welcome, felt like they were having a good time, doing all that. And that's a slightly different way to think of your restaurant than what we do is we serve great food. And maybe that's a different restaurant that says what we do is we serve exceptional food. But the woman who said our job is hospitality, that changes the nature of what her priorities are going to be and how she spends money, who she hires. She may be finding that as she morphs, that it may be turned into a tapas place where there's less food and more drink. There's more places for people to hang out together. They're looking at what your pillar is, what your core competencies are, is the way to start. And then looking at 2022, sit down and what your priorities are. And you probably know what some of those are. I mean, you probably know that your priority may be, for most of us in business, is to make enough money to stay in business. And that is a reasonable priority to have. You may have some priorities of things that you need to do or want to do. It may be adding staff. It may be, adding a new line, opening someplace new. It may be responding to some problems that you have. But looking at what you at the beginning of this planning session think are likely to be your priorities for 2022. You may come back by the time you're through with this little planning session to change it, but that's the next question to ask. Then I think it's really important to say, what's working for you? What makes you money? And when I talk about making money, there's two kinds of ways to think about making money. There's cash flow and there's profits. And I want you to think about both of them, because, I had my first or second client I ever had was a company that had a lot of profits. They were a profitable business and had terrible cash flow. And as a result, they were always in trouble. Otherwise, you often find a lot of companies that have good cash flow, but terrible profits. And so over time, they're staying in business, but it's always stressful. And so what you want to look at when you're looking at your priorities and what's working and what you're dealing with, you want to be looking at what's worked in terms of cash flow and what's worked in terms of profit. And how do we make sure that those things are working for us? Over time, and I'm going to use my own experience, over time, we saw that, which of our businesses were more profitable. We also saw which ones could bring us more cash flow. And so, for instance, we're both in physical books and in digital books and electronic books. And over time, we saw our physical books bringing us more cash flow, our electronic books bringing us more profits. And as we looked at our priorities, where we're going to take our energy in terms of our sales force, our marketing, our time, which conferences we were going to go to, which people we would target, we started looking at where we could also be more profitable so we could increase our cash flow in those areas, because increasing sales in low profit margin areas are not necessarily where you want to put your priorities. So as you're looking at at what's worked, I want you to look at both issues of what's worked in terms of cash flow, what's worked in terms of profits, what's worked in terms of keeping your customers. The last couple of years has been very difficult. What's worked in terms of getting new customers, I got to tell you, I live in downtown Palo Alto, which is a very lively, normally lively area, and with a lot of restaurants. What worked before March of 2020 for them was serving the business community. We were an in-migration, a daily in-migration city where people came here to work. And the restaurants, and especially the retail and whatever, has really had to pivot to now be serving more of a local community, because the business community has not returned in droves and probably won't for quite some time. So looking at what worked, and I walk around downtown and I see some restaurants that are now thriving because they have figured out that they have a somewhat different clientele. They have built parklets, they've created in some cases entertainment, so looking at that. It's also important to ask yourself what hasn't, so that you can start eliminating those activities that haven't worked for you. And I really want to urge you to do that. I really, really, really want to urge you to do that, because I think it's easy for us as small business owners to be doing things, and the reality is are so busy. I'm so busy. You're so busy. I think there's a program called 100 Hats, because a small business owner wears so many different hats. You're so busy that you're always putting out fires. You're always doing work. So the question of getting back into what am I doing that isn't really working for me? Maybe I'm keeping low profit, high difficulty customers, and I'm too afraid to let them go, and they take up all my time. Maybe what's not working for me is some employee, and I'm just too worried that I won't be able to find another one, that I keep holding on to an employee that makes my life sort of miserable or not worth going to work every day. What's not working for you? Because the reality is that in 2022, besides taking on the things that you think will work better, you also are probably going to need to jettison some of the things that aren't working for you. And believe it or not, that's a harder thing to do, as you probably know in your own life, because it's hard to let go. The next issue that you have to deal is what's critical for success. What are the things that are critical for success? And when I say critical for success, I don't mean just business success. Small business owners are personal. What's critical for you for personal success? It is absolutely, totally all right. I am giving you permission to say that critical for my business success is that I'm home after school with my kids. So that is critical for my business success. I was doing a business plan for a man, and I was asking what's a critical component of your business. And he said, I need to play golf 3 times a week in the afternoon. It's like, okay, that was critical for his success. So as I ask you to look at what's critical for your success, there are going to be some real tactical things. This is fresh in my mind because we just did this yesterday. One of the things that's critical for our success that's not working right now is review copies for professors. The way we deal with it now is we use a service that's very clumsy. I don't think it's very successful for the professors, and we don't get a lot of conversions as a result. So one thing that we looked at that's critical for success is how can we solve that? Because that's a feeder for us for new clients. So taking a look both personally and business as to what's critical for your success helps you figure out what your priorities are. And I'm going to need to keep moving on here. So, all right. And I don't want you to spend on an annual plan the same kind of time you would spend on doing a general big business plan. But what kind of outside factors are there affecting you? And part of the reason I don't want you to spend too much time on it is because the last 2 years, that's probably what you've spent the most time on. And I want you to have a sense that you are taking charge of this again, that you are more in charge of your life. You're flexible, you're embracing change, you're responding to change, but you are the person in charge. So one of the worksheet I'm going to give you is a SWOT worksheet. And many of you have already had one or seen one, but it looks like this. And it's just 4 big squares in which in the square on the left, you put your strengths. On the square on the right, you put your weaknesses. On the bottom square on the left, you put your opportunities. And on the bottom square on the right, you put the threats. And if you do nothing else, but use this one, the one worksheet, and it's available to you as a participant in this webinar, is to sit down and really take a look at, this is a 35,000 foot view of your business, of where your strengths are. And a lot of those strengths are going to be personal strengths. They could also be relationships. You know, they could be a distribution channel. They could be a vendor that you have. It could be a vendor, could be a big weakness these days. The supply chain. Oh my God, I'm dealing with supply chain problems right now. I've just spent when I said the first week of January was not, I didn't feel great. It was our print, we're back at print. It's a good problem to have. We're incredibly low on stock. And we had gone for a reprint. We put it in a couple of months ago and they still hadn't gone to press, and they said it wasn't going to be till June. They couldn't get paper. So I spent a lot of last week wrestling up for that. So dealing with supply chain issues may be a weakness. It could be a threat, you know, something out there that you're not sure of yet, but a vendor problem. So looking at both the big picture and the little picture. A lot of times your strength can be employees or personnel, or a team that's out there, you know, independent contractors. I work with quite a number of independent contractors. My book designer is an independent contractor I've worked with we were trying to figure out, I think it's going to be close to 20 years. And she was in on my planning session. My team includes independent contractors. So those can also be a strength for you. One weakness, and remember when I said I was going to get back to you and give you a little bit of a lecture. I don't give many lectures, but I'm going to give you one little lecture. The 25%, only 25% of you are going to deal with technology. One thing you have to do this year, sooner rather than later, is a threat for many businesses are when they have all of their information on premises or backed up on hard drives. You really do need to make sure you have everything in the cloud, because emergencies happen. I have gone through, in my career, I've gone through at least one major earthquake, maybe two. We had our office flooded, and the building had you don't want to know about it, it was terrible. I've dealt with fires and helping small businesses in fires, with 9/11, with all kinds of things. And one of the biggest problems, and Kelly and the SBDC staff will tell you this, one of the biggest problems in recovery is if you don't have access to good financial records. If you've lost them on a computer. I talked to small businesses in Paradise, California. I was talking to a number of them, a lot of them, a couple of years ago, and they lost their computers in the fire. They just weren't at their desk, you know, or their office or their home when they, you know, it was a fast moving fire. You know, you're not going to walk around with your one computer. You need to keep all of that data in the cloud. And we've learned that working remotely is really critical. So there we are. I want to leave a little time for questions. So I better get back to this. And with your annual plan, I want you to make decisions. You don't have to make firm and strong ones, but say, these are our priorities. Here are some tactical things we need to get done. We set up a couple of meetings for things that we had to do. We assigned a couple of people some things that needed to be done. That is the power of doing an annual plan, is you take from just sort of being in your head about things and you create a situation that you actually are going forward with. So turn that general planning into some sense of what your tasks are, who are the personnel involved, what the time is likely to take, what kind of budget we'll do. And most importantly, at least for me, is to set some deadlines, because I am a person who works to deadlines. So create an action plan based on the priorities that you were looking at. The other thing I want you to think about this year, particularly, even if you haven't looked at it for a while, is pricing. We have seen the biggest inflation that we've seen in many in like a couple decades, I think. We are seeing inflation from our vendors. Oh my God, I certainly am seeing it. And from everything else. So as you're in your annual plan, I think you also need to be looking at what are you charging? And I mean, I have a big customer that wants the same price that they've gotten for over 15 years. And it's difficult. These are some difficult negotiations, but now is a time, probably more than ever, that you can have those difficult conversations about what prices you're going to charge. Finally, and one of the things I would say, in your annual plan, in your daily life, I have become more and more committed over the last 2 years, and I was already committed to really being part of the small business community and making my decision to shop where I spend my money. I try to make small business first, local second, small and local online. I'd like, but really making a commitment to help support your fellow small business owners. I shop at a small grocery store. I don't have an Amazon Prime membership. I try to shop from local, and I'm a big independent bookstore, but we can give up a little bit of convenience to keep our communities together. So I really urge you to think about shopping small. And even when you can't shop small, it's better to go to a big box store that's local than to be doing a big online retailer who is bringing very little to your community. Finally, I really just want you to say, I believe in you. And I think one of the most important things is for you to believe in you. I mean, as I started with this, I said, one of the great things about small business owners and entrepreneurs is they are in their DNA optimist. Nobody starts a small business thinking it's going to fail. You just don't do that. You start with the idea that you're going to succeed, that you can make something from nothing. And the reality is you have. Almost everybody who has started a small business has created something that wasn't there before. I mean, that's really powerful. That you can create something from nothing. I remember, so I was a consultant before I went into publishing and stuff for many years. And I remember thinking about sometime about 18 months into my business that I thought, I have made this all. I made this out of nothing. I made it out of my knowledge. I made it out of my energy. I made it out of, I am supporting myself from my own efforts. I don't have a job. I don't have a boss. I'm not working. I made it. And then when I hired people, I later was able to say I made jobs for others, which I think is probably the thing that I'm proudest of in my life, was that I created jobs for others. And so, and then helped other people create jobs and create businesses. So I think we're going to go into some questions. I think we have a couple of questions, but I really would say to anyone that, as you go into 2022, I think the two key things are to have a belief in yourself and a plan for your business. And they go hand in hand. And, that by taking a look carefully at your own assets, at your business's assets, and what you've achieved. I really hope that part of your annual plan is looking at what your achievements have been. And I think that is a way to rev up your motor as well, is to look at how far you've come. If any of the people who are listening to now were in business in 2019 or are still in business in 2022, oh my God, congratulations. I mean, look what you did. And probably in what I hope will be the hardest time of your business life and all of our business lives. You have come through it. So I feel confident. We're in February 1st we start the new Chinese New Year, and it's the year of the tiger. And the year of the tiger bodes very well for entrepreneurs. I always write a column about the Chinese New Year. Don't believe in astrology, but I do feel like we are coming into a tiger year, a year where there's a lot of optimism, a lot of growth, and what I would say is find that tiger within you to go out there and build on that. So Kelly, I just want to say if there are questions or comments, or if you or your staff want to add something, please jump in.
Well, I did get one question by email, and it was basically along the lines of business planning. And there's so many components of business planning. Was this question: what would, in your view, is the most important part of a business plan?
Well, if you're doing a whole business, and this even in an annual plan, I think, they're all important, said the mom to, about all my children, because you can get, caught up in any, but I would say the most important thing is to clearly define your target market, to really understand who your customer is, and to keep refining that. Now what we've just gone through with the pandemic, a lot of pivoting has gone, as I talked about the restaurants and stores on University Avenue, their market changed. Over the years, my market, I've really got a good grasp on who my market is. And that enables me to save my money on marketing and sales. I know who to go out and sell to. And we just had a long conversation about that yesterday. So I think if you're going to have one thing that you really spend a lot of time on, figure out who your best customers are that you can actually reach and sell to. Not theoretically, but the ones who you have the capability of reaching, who will actually buy from you, who are the best ones of those, and be narrowly defined on them.
Yeah, and I might only add that that's a great point. But it's so nice to see businesses that plan for the sake of planning to make money rather than planning to try to get some form of capital. It is really, I know the clients that I've worked with in the past, it is so much more fun when you're using this tool as a planning tool to make your business better and to make money rather than just to try to acquire money. So
let me just pick up on that because so the name, this is bear with me. The name of my book is The Successful Business Plan. And I always say the adjective successful is defining business, not the plan. You're planning for a successful business. And that is the goal, because, and I say right at the beginning, and this is one of the most famous venture capitalists said to me, Eugene Kleiner, he said, look, if I lose money in a business, I can make it back up in another business. But if you lose 5 years of your life in a business that goes under, you can't get that back. And I used to be a business plan consultant, and I would read business plans and review them. And I remember getting just a beautifully written business plan. And I said to the guy, this is a great business plan. You will raise money on it and your business will fail. What's the point of that? And he did raise, I said, you've targeted the wrong customers. You can't, really execute on this. It was a great business plan, bad business. So you're absolutely right, Kelly. When you do a business plan for business success, not just fundraising.
Well, Rhonda, thank you for being here today, and also for making your newsletter available to everyone. I saw your slide on that. Okay. And I must tell you that when we started doing this webinar series back on March 18th, 2020, you were one of the resources. Your newsletter had good, timely information early about the CARES program, about what was coming out of PPP. And when information back then was basically sitting in on hearings from the Senate Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee and other resources, it really got us a footing for this webinar series based on a lot of the stuff that you provided, and then being able to provide all that information when it came along. So thank you from us. I was absolutely, my life's work. I decided that in March 20, I told my whole team, I said, our goal now is to help small businesses survive. And we went into overdrive. So I'm glad it was helpful because we spent a lot of time on that. So good. And I did credit you. I credited you on some of the early versions of the webinar when I got information from you. So
well, thank you. I wasn't doing it to get known, and there was no ROI for us on it. It was just my life's work is helping small businesses, and that is what I wanted to do. So.
Well, 21 changed where there was a lot of information available from, I think really who stepped up were the trade associations for independent industries. Yeah. But until we got to that point, all through 20, it was It was basically for, I know for me, it was Monday through Wednesday at noon, just putting this webinar together.
Great.
So, and you were a resource that we utilized. So thank you very much for that.
Well, and thank you for inviting me to do this. I've really enjoyed it. And good luck to all of you out there who've been listening. I'm really nice to chat with you.
So we will be back next week. Next week, we have our special guests are going to be Dr. Mark Evans, Dr. Richard Ryan from the CSU Bakersfield Economics Department. Dr. Ryan has done some great work on small business through the pandemic that he's going to share with us. Dr. Evans, 38 years at CSUB, a pillar of the community, just a phenomenal economist that continues to do fine work in the community. So that'll be our program for number 97 next week. Again, Rhonda, thank you so much for being here. For Maureen Busher-Dang and Rhonda Abrams, I'm Kelly Bearden. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.